Serious, what is the creepiest or most unexplained thing that's happened to you that you still think about to this day? By Ask Reddit. A few years ago, I was at my lowest point in life. Several people close to me had passed away unexpectedly, I was being bullied every day at my job, my life was falling apart. I was past being depressed, I just couldn't imagine waking up another day. So I'd planned my suicide, bought a one-way plane ticket, got sleeping pills, and wrote a series of suicide notes. On the day I was to fly out to fulfill my plan, there was a terrible accident on the freeway to the airport. It was shut down both ways. So I drove into a nearby pub to have a beer and wait out the traffic. The second I sat on the patio with my drink, a gentleman asked if he could sit with me. Whatever, I thought, sure, who cares? He told me that whatever I was doing next was a terrible idea and I would regret it. I thought, who is this random FER? But I listened. He said that he sensed I was in pain, but that I had an incredible life ahead of me, and that this was not the way my story was supposed to end. Again, I'd never met this guy in my life, and hadn't mentioned a word to him about my plan. He asked me to hand him my keys and my wallet, and he'd give them back to me after I talked and he listened. I poured my heart out to this random guy. Told him all my traumas and pains in life and why I was heading to the airport on a one-way ticket to kill myself in a cemetery across the country where my family was buried. He just listened. And then he pulled out a lighter, asked me to pull out my suicide letters and helped me burn them. He told me I was worth so much to the world and that after I finished my drink, I needed to head home and get some sleep. He told me I was going to be okay tomorrow, and I believed him. He then gave me my keys and wallet back. I left that afternoon and went home, hugged my family, got some sleep, and the next day, I started working on myself, finding a therapist, a new job. Years later, I'm in a fantastic place in life, so far from where I was that day. To this day, no one in my life knows how close I came to killing myself. But this random stranger just somehow understood me and saved my life. I never saw him again, I don't even know his name. It's the most unexplained thing that has ever happened to me. And I think about that guy every day, so, thank you, kind stranger, for saving my life that random September day on a pub patio.
I don't know why I am posting this, but maybe it is because you are perhaps one of the few people who will understand. I once had something similar happen to me. I had planned to jump off a bridge near where I live. I was dead set on killing myself. I was just out of energy and love. I had no more life to give, if that makes any sense. It was right before Christmas, and it was snowing. I stopped at a hotel near the bridge to mooch off their Wi-Fi to finish my suicide notes. I was just about done when my battery died. Fine. I checked into a room to charge my laptop. As I was waiting, I began to get hungry. I felt burdened by the hunger, more annoyed than anything, so I decided to get something to eat. This hotel was located in a small town, and the only restaurant was right next door. I was over, and there was a closed sign on the door, but the lights were on, and I could hear people inside, so I go in. A grey-haired man came out of the back and told me that him and the employees were having a Christmas party, but their chef could whip something up. I go into the main dining room, and wait around a while before getting up to grab myself a beer. This big black guy comes out from the kitchen and asks me what I want to eat. I tell him that a burger and fries would do, or whatever is easiest for him. I go sit down in a booth and ponder what a big black guy is doing out in the middle of nowhere. The area we were in is pretty close-minded. Anyhow, he comes out from the kitchen with a burger, fries, another beer and one for himself. He promptly sits down and joins me. My thoughts for my suicide note are promptly pushed away, as I become annoyed by his presence. He begins talking to me, telling me about his life. Just filling silence, you know. Then, he tells me that what I am about to do is a big mistake. If I don't care about living, why not do exactly what made me happy? Why not do all of the things I had been meaning to do but put off for work, for solving other people's problems. He said a lot of other things too, some of which felt like he knew me and felt a bit foreboding, but in a good way, like somehow he knew that I would overcome all this suffering and lead a good life. By the end of the conversation, I was too exhausted to finish my note. I decided to finish it in the morning. When I woke up, I decided to give myself 1 year. Just 1 year to try everything that man suggested. I decided to really truly do everything I could to be happy, to really give my all to doing the things I had been putting off. I decided to walk next door and see if I could find him or at least leave him a note. When I walked in, no one knew what I was talking about. There was no Christmas party. No black guy had ever worked there and they closed at 5 p.m. the evening before due to the weather. I walked away stunned, but I couldn't really say surprised. The whole evening seemed surreal. To this day, I have no idea who that man was. I only know that I owe him my life. The changes that I made that year after I met him eventually led to me meeting my husband and having my son. We stopped there on a summer road trip this past year, and I cried when I realized how close I came to ending my life. I can't imagine not knowing my husband or my son. I think of that man often, and I call him my angel. Frankly, I don't care if he is or not, but he will always be the angel that saved my life. I hope someday I can pass it on.
Driving home from work late one night I was followed and it was weird. I left the hospital and turned off the main road to a bunch of side streets I would take. At one point I noticed a car behind me that made the same left turn as me. They sped up to get behind me. I thought nothing of it. Then I briefly thought about running to 7-Eleven to grab some food and turned on my right signal. But I realized I had food at home, so I turned my signal off. The car behind me turned on their right signal and turned it off as well exactly as I had. At that point I got a bit spooked. So I turned my right signal on and they did as well. Instead at the next intersection I turned left even though my right signal was on. They did as well. They proceeded to follow me through a series of odd turns. Eventually I turned onto a cul-de-sac I knew about and figured I could turn around there and look at the driver to see who was following me. As I approached the end of the road they figured out what I was doing. They stopped and did a fast K-turn and sped off. It was weird. Still don't know who it was.
If you suspect you're being followed in the future, make 4 in a row right-hand turns, a square if you will. If the car behind you does the same, you're being followed and you should find a safe place to go.
I used to work in a nursing home where I cared for dementia patients. Every patient on the hall I worked on would steal spoons from dinner to give to the kids because they like shiny things. It got to the point where once a week I'd have to go through everyone's room to take back the spoons. I asked the patients about the kids many times but never got a good answer. I'd hear things like, they just live here, or, they stand outside in the snow and look in the windows, or, they're my friends who visit. Wouldn't be so weird if they all didn't do it, but it was everyone, the ones who were still capable of speaking anyways. One time at 3 a.m. one of my patients started screaming so I ran in her room and found her laying in bed, seemingly fine. I asked what was wrong and she said that boy is here again and won't get out of my closet. I'm scared. Like me too, Dolores, what the heck?
I used to work in a nursing home through high school in the Midwest in a tiny-ass town. I'll never forget the story of the night when 4 or 5 call lights went on one of our wings /halls, and every single one was to tell us something to the effect of the children came and rearranged the furniture. Sure enough there were chairs pushed around even in rooms where the resident wasn't able to stand on their own. The creepiest one was the man who was seated on the toilet and has a chair pushed up against the door. Who wasn't able to stand on his own and used a wheelchair plus someone to help him get up to it. There were more creepy stories I gained on night shift over 4 years, but that one was definitely scary even not being first-hand. My personal favorite first-hand experience was at various points throughout the night we heard a very distinct scream. My partner and I cleared all the rooms looking for someone in trouble, radioed the nurse and she didn't hear it at all. Later we were outside and heard it again, and she was inside and called us back in freaking out. A few hours later we had a resident go missing and we found her in an empty room in the pitch black just staring at the wall.
I had a recurring nightmare of a pitch-black parasite sucking the life out of me. Sometimes it waited for me in dark corners to go to bed. My cats always slept on my bed during that time. For me it was a very stressful time. I got an itch at the place of my chest where I dreamed the parasite was sucking my life out of me. I got sick and felt a pea-sized lump. I went to my doc and they ordered a biopsy of that lump. As it turned out I had male breast cancer at the age of 28. After I got well again the dream never came back and my cats slept in their places again and not on my bed. The dream was creepy enough. What it made for me were my cats protecting me.
Cats are remarkably in tune with human health. Many stories of cats in nursing homes spending time with someone right before they die. My own cat will never leave my side when I'm really sick. It's quite interesting.
I had a schnauzer that could hear a cat stalk across a Persian rug. The slightest noise could wake her from a slumber and set off her constant barking. She made a great tent companion while on backpacking trips. Bears, raccoons and skunks would all get fair warning if they came within range of our campsite. One morning we woke up from a night without interruptions in the backcountry of SW Colorado and I found my tent's central galeen was no longer staked down by the aluminum stake that I had used but instead by a piece of aspen branch that had been carved into what looked like a tiki statue. Nothing too ornate but a snarling face with teeth had been carved from the bark and it had obviously been heated in a fire to give it a brown color. My dog didn't make a sound and I apparently slept harder than I thought. I scrambled out of the tent and looked around the small alpine lake and saw no other campers nor any sign that people had been around. Cut my trip short and hauled ass the 8 miles back to my car. Not a single other car in the lot at the trailhead.
Whenever I think about doing a rural camping trip by myself, this is the kind of stuff I imagine happening. So creepy.
Jesus. This one really freaks me out. Like who would do that and why? Why didn't your dog freak out, or if it did how did it not wake you up? This one is so bizarre.
We had a rescue dog years back, terrier mix. We lived in the countryside on a wooded hillside and owned about 5 acres of woodland and rough fields, mostly wild. This dog loved to be up there chasing rabbits but loved her home too, so would never be gone for very long. One day she went missing. We took our other dogs up there and searched thoroughly but nothing. We had another friend bring his dogs, nothing. We advertised, put up posters, we did little but search high and low for 6 days but nothing. On the 6th day we had pretty much given up hope, but I decided to go up one last time because I had a hunch, a tickle in my belly, about one particular area which had already been thoroughly searched. I took a sickle and a pair of gardening gloves and hacked my way towards the center of a huge bramble patch. It was summer and all I could hear was birdsong and insects, but suddenly I heard a muffled yip. I called her name and then heard her again getting excited. She was deep underground in a rabbit warren. I stayed calling to her until help arrived. The local fire brigade were kind enough to come and help and advise, and we got her out eventually. She ran around like a demented muddy pup, and amazingly the vet said she was basically okay, had probably been getting enough moisture from eating mud to keep her alive. I am not generally a fanciful person, but I just knew in my knower she was there. No explanation for it.
That's super strange, but somehow I have a pretty similar sixth sense type story. My oldest friend and I went to different high schools, but we kept up with holiday messages just to keep the friendship going. The only way I could text her was through my Facebook account, but since I only had the account on my old iPod, I only checked it every couple of weeks to check in or see if she sent me anything. So anyway, one day I just get this sudden urge to charge up my iPod and see if she sent me anything. I hadn't checked for around a month or so chances are she had, if just a how are things going type message. Once I charge it up though, turns out she had sent me a message, literally 30 minutes before. It turns out that she was sent to a mental health institute for youth after attempting suicide and she wanted to call and talk about it. I went through an incredibly similar situation a year or so previously, so we talked for hours about what she was going through. Now she's in a much better place. That was all around 3 years ago. I wonder if it was all just a coincidence, to check if she texted me at that point. I don't really know what to believe, but thank goodness I did check when I did.
I've shared this before, but I still think it's an interesting story. I was exploring the area behind my house shortly after we moved in. The area back there had once been a small quarry that had since filled with water. It was a bit of pond that supposedly went straight down 60 feet if you stepped into it. I was walking along the edge, and I came across a backpack filled with old video game cartridges, and a set of clothing just laying on the ground. They were for the N64, and we found this around 2004, so they were outdated. Next to it was a set of clothing. The clothes were laying on the ground, spread out, pants and shirt, so it looked like someone laying down. They looked like they'd been there a long time. Same with the backpack. I told my parents and they called the cops. There had been no reports of missing children or anything in the area. We never got an explanation, but it was weird. Edit, just to answer some questions. I don't think it was a prank. While we were new to the neighborhood, we were renters. Also, most of our neighbors were elderly. This happened in a rural Virginia town, and I can't imagine anyone wasting cartridges like that since most kids were lucky to have an N64. No people, adult or child, had been reported by families or the neighborhood as missing for years. They never searched the quarry because they never had any reason to think there was something wrong. My sister and I went out there every day for a year or so and just avoided that spot because I was creepy. As far as I know, they are still out there.
Memorial to a child who drowned years before?
Not that we knew of. It was a small neighborhood and something like that would have been common knowledge.